"Claire, take your backpack." My mother said it from the passenger seat without turning around. That was the first thing I noticed, though I didn't understand why it mattered yet. We were parked outside a bus station I had never been to, 30 miles from home, while my father kept the engine running. He told me Aunt Melissa was coming to get me. He said everyone just needed a little space after what happened that morning. I believed him because I was 14, and because parents are supposed to know where they're leaving you. My backpack was light, too light. 2 shirts, my notebook, a toothbrush, and no charger. My mother always packed like the world might end, but that day she didn't even check the zipper. When I asked what time my aunt's bus arrived, my father looked at my mother. Then he said, "She'll know where to find you," and drove away before I could ask how. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. For a few seconds, I stayed on the curb with my backpack hanging from one shoulder, watching the taillights shrink into traffic. I expected them to break. I expected my mother to turn around in her seat and look back, because she always looked back. At school drop-off, at the grocery store. Even when I only walked to the mailbox, she watched until I reached the driveway again. That day, she didn't. The bus station was small, mostly brick and dirty glass, with 2 benches outside and a trash can overflowing with coffee cups. A man in a work jacket smoked near the entrance. A woman pulled a suitcase behind her with one broken wheel. No one seemed surprised to see me standing there alone, so I tried to act like I knew what I was doing. Inside, the air smelled like floor cleaner, old fries, and rain. Fluorescent lights buzzed above the ticket counter. A television mounted near the vending machines played a weather report with the volume turned low. Behind the glass, a woman in a blue vest stamped tickets without looking up. I sat on the bench closest to the window. From there, I could see the parking lot, just in case my parents came back. They had fought that morning, not loudly. That was what made it strange. My father usually slammed cabinets when he was angry. My mother usually cried in the laundry room and pretended she had allergies. But that morning, their voices stayed low. Their bedroom door stayed shut. When I passed the hallway, the talking stopped. Then my mother came out holding my backpack. She said I was going to Aunt Melissa's for a few days. She said it like the decision had already been made, like I had missed the meeting where my own life was discussed. I asked if I was in trouble. My father said no. He said it too quickly. At the station, I checked the clock above the restroom doors. 5:14 p.m. I told myself Aunt Melissa might be late. She lived almost an hour away. Maybe my parents had called her from the car. Maybe she already knew. But then I remembered something that tightened slowly in my stomach. Aunt Melissa didn't take buses. She hated them. She said they made her car sick, even when she wasn't the one driving. She had a green SUV with a cracked windshield and a keychain full of silver charms. If she was coming for me, she would come through the front doors, jingling those keys and saying my name too loudly. I waited for that sound. It never came. At 6:03, I went to the ticket counter and asked if there was a bus arriving from Millbrook. The woman in the blue vest typed something into her computer. Not tonight. I thought I had misheard her. What about later? She shook her head. No Millbrook route on Fridays. I stepped back from the counter before she could ask why I wanted to know. That was the first time I let myself think my parents had not made a mistake. Not exactly. There were too many clean edges to it. The light backpack. The running engine. My mother not turning around. My father answering questions with sentences that ended too soon. I sat down again and opened my notebook, because writing things in order helped me stay calm. Time dropped off. Bag packed. No charger. Aunt Melissa's supposed to come. No bus. I stared at the list until the words stopped looking like words. Then the television above the vending machines changed from weather to a local alert. The volume was still low, but I knew the school photo before I saw my name. My first thought was not fear, it was correction. That photo was from 8th grade picture day. My hair was parted wrong because I had slept through my alarm. My smile was tight because my mother had told me not to show my braces. I remembered the exact morning because she had made me retake the photo twice, then still complained when the proofs came home. So when I saw it on the television, my mind tried to place it somewhere ordinary. Maybe the school had an announcement. Maybe there was a community program. Maybe someone had made a mistake with the broadcast. Then the text under my face appeared. Missing. I read it once, then again, slowly. Claire Whitaker. Age 14, last seen at her family home. That was wrong. Not complicated wrong. Not confusing wrong. just wrong. I had not been last seen at home. I had been last seen in my parents' car, in this exact parking lot, with my father telling me Aunt Melissa would know where to find me. The woman at the ticket counter looked up at the screen. Then she looked at me. I turned away too fast and pretended to search through my backpack. I did not know what I was looking for. My hands moved through folded shirts, my notebook, the toothbrush, the granola bar, no charger, no money, no note, no proof. The alert continued, but the sound was too low for me to catch every word. I heard family concerned. I heard possible runaway. I heard contact authorities. Possible runaway. The words landed carefully, like someone had chosen them before I ever stepped out of the car. I tried to think like an adult. My parents must have called the police after dropping me off. Maybe they had to report me missing so Aunt Melissa could get help finding me. Maybe there was some rule I did not understand. But if that was true, why say I was last seen at home? Why not say bus station? Why not say they left me there? A man sitting near the bathrooms folded his newspaper in half. He did not stop staring. A woman with a toddler pulled her child closer when I glanced in their direction. I lowered my head and pulled my backpack onto my lap. For the first time that evening, the station did not feel like a place I was waiting in. It felt like a place where everyone else had been told something about me before I knew what it was. I walked to the payphone beside the vending machines. Because my cell phone had one bar that disappeared every time I lifted it. The receiver felt sticky against my ear. I dialed Home Collect and listened to the automated voice ask for my name. I opened my mouth. Then I stopped. If my parents answered, what would I say? Why did you leave me here? Why is my face on the news? Why did you tell everyone I disappeared? I hung up before the call connected. Then I dialed Aunt Melissa's number from memory. She had made me memorize it when I was 10, after my mother forgot to pick me up from piano lessons and called it a scheduling misunderstanding. The phone rang 6 times. No answer. I tried again. Still nothing. When I turned around, the woman from the ticket counter was on the station phone. Her body was angled away from me, but her eyes kept coming back. At 8:17 p.m., she walked over with a paper cup of water. Her voice was gentle but too careful. Are you Claire? I nodded. Her expression changed before she spoke again, like my answer had confirmed something she wished it hadn't. Outside the front windows, 2 police cars pulled into the lot without sirens. The officers came in slowly. That was one of the first details I noticed. They did not rush through the doors. They did not shout my name or grab my arm or treat the station like a crime scene. One stayed near the entrance, scanning the room. The other walked toward me with his hands visible and his voice low. Claire Whitaker? I nodded again. My name is Officer Hayes, he said. This is Officer Ramirez. Are you hurt? I shook my head. Do you need medical help? No. Do you know where you are? I looked toward the ticket counter, then back at him. The bus station. He gave a small nod like each answer mattered, like he was arranging them in a line and checking whether they matched something he already knew. The woman from the counter stayed a few steps away. She still held the phone cord in one hand. The man with the newspaper had moved closer to the wall. Nobody spoke loudly. That made the room feel even smaller. Officer Hayes crouched slightly so he was not towering over me. Can you tell me how you got here? My parents brought me. Behind him, Officer Ramirez stopped writing. It was not a dramatic pause. His pen simply froze above the notepad for half a second before he continued. But I saw it, and once I saw it, I could not pretend it meant nothing. Officer Hayes kept his face steady. Both of your parents? Yes. What time? I don't know exactly. Around 5. Maybe a little after. Did they come inside with you? No. Did they say where they were going? I tried to remember the exact words, because suddenly exact words felt important. My dad said Aunt Melissa was coming to get me. My mom said I should stay inside. They said everyone needed space. Space from what? I looked down at the paper cup in my hands. The rim had bent where I was pressing it. They were arguing this morning, I said, but not like usual. Officer Hayes did not ask what usual meant. Not yet. He asked if I had a phone. I gave it to him. The battery icon was red, and there were no missed calls from my parents. That seemed important too, though I did not know why until Officer Ramirez looked at the screen and then at Hayes. No charger? Hayes asked. No money? I shook my head. Did they give you a ticket? No. Did they give you a note? Anything for your aunt? No. Each answer made the air change slightly. Not enough for anyone else in the station to notice, but enough for me. The officers were still calm. Their questions were still simple, but they were no longer asking like adults trying to return a child home. They were asking like something had already stopped making sense. Officer Hayes glanced toward the ticket counter. We're going to step into that office for a minute. Is that okay? I wanted to say no. The office was small and windowed, tucked beside the schedule boards. It had a desk, 2 plastic chairs, a wall calendar, and a coffee maker with old stains around the burner. It looked ordinary, which somehow made sitting inside it worse. Officer Ramirez stood outside the door and made a call. Through the glass, I saw him turn his back to the room. He listened more than he talked. Then he pressed 2 fingers against the bridge of his nose. Officer Hayes sat across from me with his notebook open. I need you to tell me everything from the beginning, he said. Not what you think matters. Everything you remember. So I did. I told him my mother knocked on my bedroom door after lunch with my backpack already packed. I told him she would not let me add anything except my notebook. I told him my father stood by the front door holding his keys, not looking at the living room, not looking at the family photos on the wall, not looking at me. I told him my mother said, "Don't make this harder." Officer Hayes wrote that down exactly. I told him the drive was quiet, no radio, no phone calls. My father took the county road instead of the highway, even though the highway was faster. My mother kept checking the side mirror, not behind us exactly, but toward my side of the car. She seemed nervous, he asked. I thought about it. No, I said. She seemed prepared. That answer made him stop writing for a moment. Then he asked about Aunt Melissa. I explained that she was my mother's younger sister. She lived outside Millbrook. She had always been the one adult who asked me questions and waited for full answers. She sent birthday cards with $20 bills inside, even when my mother said I was too old for that. She called every Sunday night, unless my mother said I was busy. When was the last time you spoke to her? Hayes asked. Last week. Maybe Sunday. What did you talk about? School. A book she wanted me to read. She asked if everything was okay at home. Why would she ask that? I looked at the office window. Officer Ramirez was still on the phone. The woman at the counter watched him from behind the glass. Because my mom was standing near me, I said. And Aunt Melissa could tell. Hayes wrote that down too. Then he lowered his pen. We've been trying to reach your aunt, he said. For the first time since the alert, I felt something close to relief. So she knows I'm here? He did not answer immediately. That was worse than no. Claire, he said, choosing the words carefully. Your aunt called us this morning. I stared at him. She said she hadn't been able to reach you. She said your mother told her you were sick and sleeping. But when your aunt asked to talk to you, your mother refused. My mouth went dry. That doesn't make sense, I said. I know. No, I mean my mom said Aunt Melissa was coming here. Officer Hayes looked at the notes again. Not because he needed them, but because he did not want his face to answer before his mouth did. Your aunt wasn't told you were coming here, he said. She's been looking for you too. The office seemed to tilt slightly, though nothing moved. The bus station, the light backpack, the no charger, the alert saying home, the word runaway. My mother telling Aunt Melissa I was sick while packing my bag. They were not separate details anymore. They were connected, but the connection was still just out of reach. Officer Ramirez opened the office door. He did not step inside right away. He looked at Hayes first, then at me, and his voice dropped. We checked the house. Officer Hayes stood. I gripped the paper cup so hard water spilled over my fingers. Ramirez continued, quieter now. Claire, your parents aren't there. For a moment, nobody explained what that meant. Officer Ramirez stayed in the doorway. Officer Hayes stood beside the desk. I sat between them with cold water on my fingers, trying to understand why adults always paused before saying the part that mattered. My parents aren't home, I asked. Hayes sat back down slowly. No, maybe they went looking for me. It sounded reasonable when I said it. It sounded like something a normal parent would do. Leave, panic, drive around, call people. It gave my mind something to hold on to. But Officer Hayes did not agree. He only asked, did they say anything about where they might go after dropping you off? I shook my head. Any relatives out of state? Friends? Places they visit when they need time away? No. Officer Ramirez stepped fully into the office and closed the door behind him. Through the glass, I could still see the station. The ticket woman had returned to the counter. A bus driver walked past with a paper cup of coffee. A man checked the arrivals board. Outside the office, life continued in ordinary pieces. Inside, every question narrowed. Hayes opened a fresh page in his notebook. Claire, I'm going to ask you about the report your parents made. The missing person report? Yes. They made it after they left me here? He looked at Ramirez. That was answer enough. Hayes said the report came in at 6:02 p.m. I looked at the wall clock. I tried to place the time in order. I had been sitting on the bench then, watching the doors, still believing Aunt Melissa might walk in. What did they say? I asked. Hayes folded his hands over the notebook. They said you left the house after an argument. I waited for him to correct himself. He did not. They said you were last seen near your bedroom window. My bedroom window, I repeated. My room was on the second floor. The window had been painted shut since before we moved in. My father said fixing it was expensive and unnecessary. It did not open more than an inch. Hayes watched my face. That isn't true? No, I left through the front door, with them. What else did they say? I asked. He hesitated. That hesitation told me there was more and that the more was not small. They said you took cash from your mother's dresser. I almost laughed because it was so cleanly false. Not funny. Just impossible in a way that made my body reject it before my mind did. My mom doesn't keep cash in her dresser, I said. She keeps old receipts and hair clips in there. My dad keeps cash in a coffee tin above the refrigerator. Hayes wrote that down. Ramirez looked at him again. That was when I realized my answers were not only defending me. They were filling gaps the officers already knew were there. What else? I asked. Hayes lowered his voice. They said you had been emotional lately, that you might be confused, that you sometimes made up stories when upset. I stared at the tabletop. The surface was scratched with names and initials. Someone had carved a heart near the edge. I focused on it because it was easier than looking at the officers. I had been quiet lately, not emotional. I had learned to be quiet because my parents had started stopping conversations when I entered rooms. My mother had begun taking phone calls outside. My father had started locking the study door, even when he was only going to the kitchen. I had not known those things meant anything. Now they did. They wanted you to think I was lying, I said. Neither officer answered. That silence was careful, but it was not empty. Hayes said, right now, we're trying to establish the timeline. The word timeline made everything feel less personal and more exact. It turned the evening into measurements. Times, locations, calls, cameras. Facts that could stand up even when adults lied. I sat straighter. They dropped me off a little after 5, I said. My dad pulled up to the curb. My mom gave me the backpack. She didn't get out. He didn't either. Anything else? My dad said to stay inside. My mom said not to talk unless someone asked my name. Officer Ramirez's eyes sharpened. Say that again. I did. He wrote it down this time. Hayes asked, why do you think she said that? I thought she meant strangers, I said, like safety. And now? I looked through the glass at the ticket counter woman. She had asked my name before the police arrived. Only after that had her face changed. Now I think she knew someone would ask. The room was quiet except for the coffee maker, clicking as it cooled. Ramirez's radio crackled. He stepped away from the desk and turned the volume down before answering. His words were short. Ramirez, go ahead. I could not hear the other voice clearly, only broken sounds. Hayes kept his eyes on me, but his attention had shifted. The way adults listen to bad news while pretending not to listen. Ramirez said, timestamp? Then, send it. Then nothing. He lowered the radio slowly. Hayes stood beside him and looked at the small screen Ramirez held out. I could see only the reflection in the office glass, 2 dark uniformed shapes bent over a device. What is it? I asked. No one answered immediately. I hated that more each time it happened. Hayes finally turned the screen toward me. It showed a still image from a gas station security camera. Grainy, slightly washed out. My parents' car sat beside pump 4. My father stood near the driver's side with one hand on the gas nozzle. My mother was behind the car, near the trunk. At her feet was my backpack. Same gray fabric, same black zipper pull, same blue keychain clipped to the strap. I knew it instantly because I had drawn a star on the keychain with silver marker. Hayes pointed to the corner of the image. The timestamp read 2:46 p.m., 3 hours before they said I ran away from home. Over 2 hours before they left me at the station. I stared at the photo, trying to make it wrong. Maybe the camera clock was off. Maybe it was from another day. Maybe my backpack had been in the trunk for some normal reason. My mind tried every excuse and rejected each one because the picture was too simple. My mother had the bag before she ever knocked on my bedroom door. My father had the car fueled before he ever said we needed space. They had not reacted to a bad afternoon. They had prepared. Officer Hayes put the phone back down on the desk. Claire, he said, do you know someone named Daniel Price? I shook my head. No. Are you sure? Yes. Who is he? Hayes did not answer that directly. Have you heard your father mention that name? Maybe on the phone. Maybe when he thought you weren't listening. I searched through recent weeks. My father in the kitchen at midnight, whispering so low the refrigerator hum covered half his words. My mother standing by the sink with her arms crossed, the phrase "not with her here." A stack of envelopes disappearing from the hall table, a locked drawer that used to stay open. I don't know the name, I said. But they were arguing about something, papers, I think. Money, maybe. Ramirez and Hayes exchanged another look. This time I did not miss it. What? I asked. Hayes leaned forward, elbows on his knees. We're not going to put this on you tonight, but there may be another investigation connected to your parents. The words were vague, but the meaning pushed through anyway. My parents had not only lied about me, they had used me to cover something else. That was the moment the unfairness became clear in a way I could feel physically. I was 14, I had no car, no money, no phone charger, and no adult in the room who had known the truth before strangers had to reconstruct it. My parents had walked me into a story where every missing detail made me look worse. If I cried, I was unstable. If I panicked, I was guilty. If I contradicted them, I was making things up. And if nobody checked the cameras, I was a runaway. The station television switched back to weather. A storm system moved across the screen in green and yellow bands. Outside, rain began tapping lightly against the windows. Officer Ramirez's radio sounded again. This time he answered in the hallway. I watched him through the glass. His posture changed before he spoke. His shoulders stiffened. His head turned slightly toward the parking lot as if the news had put distance into the room. Hayes watched him too. Ramirez ended the call and came back inside. He closed the office door with one hand. They found the car, he said. My chest tightened. Where? Hayes asked. Ramirez looked at me, then back at Hayes. Near the state line, he said. Abandoned. The word abandoned did not sound real at first. Cars were parked. Cars were stolen. Cars broke down on the side of highways with hazard lights blinking. But abandoned meant someone had chosen to leave it behind. Officer Hayes asked me if I needed a minute. I said no because I did not understand what a minute would change. My parents were gone from the house. Their car was near the state line. My face had been on the television as a missing girl, while the two people who knew where I was had driven away from me on purpose. There was no version left where this was confusion. Officer Ramirez said the car had been found behind a closed service station off Route 18. The plates were still on it. The inside had been wiped down in places. My mother's purse was not there. My father's work badge was not there. The back seat was empty except for a grocery receipt and a loose hair tie caught between the cushions. No overnight bags, no family photos. No sign they planned to come back for me. I listened without interrupting. That was the strange part. I thought I would break down when the truth got close, but I became very still instead. My mind started arranging everything in order, because order was the only thing that made the room stop spinning. The backpack at 2:46. The drive without radio. My mother saying, "Don't make this harder." My father leaving the engine running. The missing report at 6:02. The claim that I had climbed out of a window that barely opened. The warning not to talk unless someone asked my name. They had not left me at the bus station because they did not know what else to do. They left me there because it made me visible. That was the part I did not understand until Officer Hayes explained the timeline later that night, after Aunt Melissa arrived and after another detective joined us in the station office. My parents had needed witnesses. They needed cameras to show me alone. They needed strangers to see me scared, confused, and quiet. They needed the police to find me after the story had already been filed. If the first report said I was a runaway, then every reaction I had could be made to fit that report. My fear would look like guilt. My confusion would look like lying. My silence would look like hiding something. And if I said my parents had dropped me off, it would sound exactly like the kind of story a desperate runaway would invent when she got caught. The unfairness of that settled slowly, then all at once. They had not only abandoned me, they had tried to make me responsible for being abandoned. Aunt Melissa arrived just before midnight in her green SUV with the cracked windshield. I heard her before I saw her, because the keychain on her keys made the same sharp, silver sound I had been waiting for all evening. She came through the front doors too fast, hair pulled back badly, coat unbuttoned, eyes already wet. Claire. That was all she said at first. I stood up because I thought there was something I was supposed to explain. Why I had not called sooner. Why I had believed my parents. Why I had sat in a station for hours waiting for a person who had never been told to come. But Aunt Melissa crossed the office before I could speak and wrapped her arms around me so tightly I could feel her shaking. "I knew something was wrong," she said into my hair. "I knew it." Those words did something the police questions had not. They made the evening real. I cried then. Not loudly, not in the way people imagine when they hear a story like this. It came out small and uneven, like I was trying to stay quiet out of habit. Aunt Melissa kept one hand on the back of my head and the other on my shoulder, as if she could hold me together by force. Detectives spoke to her in the corner. I heard pieces, medical office, missing funds. Accounts opened under relatives' names. My name. That was when the final truth became clear enough to say plainly. My father had been taking money from the medical office where he worked as an accounts manager. Not all at once. Small amounts first, then larger ones hidden through transfers and fake vendor payments. My mother knew. More than that, she had helped him move money through accounts connected to family members. One account used my social security number. Another had mail routed through Aunt Melissa's address without her permission. That was why she had started calling. Not because she knew the whole crime, but because strange bank letters had arrived in my name, and my mother refused to explain them. When Aunt Melissa asked to speak to me that morning, my mother told her I was sick. When Aunt Melissa pushed harder, my mother hung up. After that, they moved faster. They packed my bag, they fueled the car, they dropped me at the bus station. Then they reported me missing from home and drove toward the state line. The purpose was not complicated. It was selfish and precise. If police focused on a missing teenager, my parents gained time. If I looked unstable, anything I said about them became weaker. If Aunt Melissa looked frantic, she looked like an over-involved relative reacting to family stress instead of someone who had noticed financial evidence. They turned me into the distraction. They turned my absence into a tool. 2 days later, my parents were found in a motel outside another state. They had cash, prepaid phones, and clothes that had not been in our house when police searched it. They had no plan for me beyond the story they had already told. My father was charged first: theft, fraud, identity misuse, then my mother for helping him and for making a false report. There were other charges I did not fully understand at 14. Words adults used carefully around me as if softer voices could make them less ugly. The consequences did not end when they were arrested. They followed me home with Aunt Melissa. Reporters stood on the sidewalk for 3 days. Neighbors pretended not to stare and then stared anyway. At school, people repeated the first version before they learned the corrected one. Some said runaway. Some said fraud. Some said my parents must have had a reason, because adults like simple explanations when the truth makes them uncomfortable. But the official record changed. That mattered more than I expected. The police report was corrected. The station footage was logged. The gas station timestamp became evidence. Aunt Melissa's calls were documented. The lie about my bedroom window fell apart because an officer tested it and wrote exactly what I already knew. The window did not open enough for a person to climb through. Facts did what feelings could not. They stayed. I moved in with Aunt Melissa. She gave me the small bedroom at the back of her house, the one with yellow curtains and a bookshelf full of things she thought I might like. For weeks, I slept with my backpack beside the bed even though I hated looking at it. It felt like evidence and punishment at the same time. Eventually, Aunt Melissa washed the clothes inside and threw away the old granola bar. She asked before touching the notebook. I said she could read the first page. It had the list I wrote in the station. Time dropped off. Bag packed, no charger. Aunt Melissa supposed to come. No bus. She cried when she saw it, but she did not ask me to stop writing things down after that. I still think about the officer's question sometimes. "Kid, do you have any idea why everyone is looking for you?" At the time, I thought the answer was no. But the truth was worse. Everyone was looking for me because my parents wanted them to find a version of me that did not exist. A careless daughter, a runaway, a confused kid making accusations because she was scared. They needed the whole world to believe their version before I survived long enough to tell mine. And that is what I remember most about that night. Not the television, not the police cars, not even my parents driving away. I remember sitting under fluorescent lights with my own face above me, realizing that the people who left me there had not forgotten me. They had counted on me being found.